I grew up with, again, the stories of my heritage and where I come from. Like, we were kings and queens. Like, we come from Somalia. We come from like the cradle of the earth, and then we all traveled, and there is nothing I can't do. Like, I am inherently entitled to be on this earth just as much as anyone. And so are my kids, and so are you.
All I see is blessings on blessings, yeah. I see the blessings coming our way, our way, our way. Blessings on blessings.
Okay,
It's happening. It's real.
this is real. This is really happening. I'm going to be honest with you. You are one of those people that I feel like I've already known. Like
Same.
when we meet
Aw.
each other in person, I'm gonna be like, "Oh, hey, girl! Like, let's like, what's happening?" Like it's gonna catch up. You know how you sometimes have those friends that you don't see in months and months and months and maybe years, but as soon as you get
Yep.
together, it's like you've never lost a beat and you just pick up right where you left off. And I don't know why. I just feel like we're gonna have that relationship.
I can't wait. I mean, that's how I feel about you. I mean, you taught me so much about how to feed my children. I'll make this platter, and they're like, "Wow, mom!" I was like, I need to like send you all these pictures. Like, you make me look good. That's all I
Oh,
gotta say. You
look.
help me feed them proper. Like I'm a nerd mom, so just the fact that it's called a cool mom podcast, I'm like, you make me look cool. So thank you.
Rhoda, I love that, first of all, but I think I can say the same for you. You have allowed me to expand my knowledge and my interest, even with my kids, in reading. I mean,
Mhm.
I mean, look, your whole thing behind you is all books, you know? So
It's my
this,
little office.
I
I live
mean,
my children and my books.
you are just so inspirational, I think, on so many levels. And I remember first seeing you on Instagram, and I remember thinking, first of all, I was like, who is this supermodel? And I was like, she's so beautiful. And then I was like, oh my god, she's so smart. And oh my god, she's a writer. And oh my god, it was like all these things. And oh my god, I have to get this book for my kids. And I think it was just like bam,
Oh,
bam, bam. But I want to start from a little bit of the beginning with you, because I don't think many people know your origin story. And so
mhm.
the fact that you're from Somalia, how did you make the jump from Somalia to Norway? What does that look like
Yeah.
in your world?
So, well, first of all, thank you for all those nice, kind words. They are well received. Thank you. So we're a big family. We're eight siblings. I'm number seven, so I'm kind of like the baby in the family.
Oh,
And
wow.
then our dad moved us from Somalia before the war broke out to Norway.
Mm.
And we lived in like the most beautiful public housing on entire earth, is like this in a king's forest near the king's summer house with cows and horses, and it was so magical, but
Okay,
still it was like,
hold on,
yeah,
back up, because let's pause there for 2.5 seconds. Because
2.5
when
seconds.
when I was reading this and I was like, how did she go from Somalia to Norway to public housing to, becoming the magnificent, obviously successful woman you are today? But when I read public housing, you know what I think of. I'm from
I
Detroit.
know. I know.
I'm from
I
Detroit.
know.
So when
I
I
know.
think of public housing, I'm like, oh, dang, like that was deep. I mean, she was in the hood. She was, but you're
It's
saying it's so
I
different.
mean, literally, it is like, it's like one of the richest countries of the world. They have oil, and in the 80s, they took in, families from all over the world. And it is literally like you have to come visit, and we'll go there. Like
I
it's
would love
it's
that.
this beautiful little island, and our dad intentionally didn't want us to live like where everyone else immigrant families were living, but he found this little beautiful hub of a place, and we literally were like, our walk to school took forever. It was a long journey. So
You really,
when the kids
you
were
really
born,
were,
we
you
were
really,
trekking to
yeah,
school. We were
exactly.
like, no, there was no light. It sounds like a different century. But it was so beautiful. And I just remember like we didn't know we didn't have anything because we had each other. And
Ah,
we lived in this place where as long as you spoke the language, and even though we didn't look like anyone else either, you were accepted and, celebrated, and just you had kind of this, not this notion of like you didn't belong, you just looked different. And but everyone was nice and kind, and we were like a huge tribe. And then that's where my love for books started, because my dad, every Saturday, because there were so many of us, that we had our own alone time, so he would take me to the library on Saturdays, and then I would read a book, and then I would have to retell him about the book in order to go back.
Oh, I
And
like
then,
that. I like
yeah,
that. That's
it
that's
was
an
really,
interesting.
really,
Okay, wait a minute. So going back though, so you don't look like anyone, but yet you still feel accepted and like you belong. How is that possible in a place like, here, right? When you don't look like anyone, nine times out of 10, there are moments where you don't feel accepted and you don't feel like you belong. So, what was it in Norway that they were able to do that allowed you to still feel a part of the community, even though you guys clearly look different from everyone else?
yeah. I mean, it's because the history is different, right? Like
Yeah.
there's no notion of um it just doesn't have the same type of history. So
Mm.
it's a little more even playing field, in the sense of like, if you speak the language and you know the codes and you're kind and you behave and you pay your taxes, it's also a tiny little Nordic country in the middle of it. Has 5.5 million people, which is
Oh,
the size of
wow.
Brooklyn.
Yeah, yeah,
so,
exactly.
so,
Exactly. I'm like,
so
that's my neighborhood, by the way. That's
yeah, literally. So just the notion of like taking care of everyone, everyone has the same rights to anything. So I just felt like, yeah, when you live in a society and you come from a society that take care of its people,
Mhm.
regardless of how they look and where they're from, and gives them like a chance to start, like we're a family of 10, and you don't need to worry about clothes or food or job, or, so
Mhm.
it gives a different starting point, I guess. But what I noticed I was different was I loved books, but I couldn't find myself in the books.
Ah, there you
So
go.
that's where I was like, oh, but then again, in my little brain as a child, I was like, well, I guess because everyone is blonde with blue eyes. So, you know, so I had this constant longing for like searching for books. And the first story I ever wrote was this Swedish writer, and she wrote about Pippi Longstocking. I don't know if you know Pippi Longstocking.
Yes, yes.
So my
Red
first
hair,
red
pigtails.
hair. She carries the horse. She lives by
Yes,
herself. She's like a
exactly.
little naughty. And the first story I ever wrote was about being Pippi's friend, like Pippi's brown friend. That was I was like, I'll be Pippi's friend. She should have a friend like me. So
Wow.
yeah. And then yeah, so every Saturday he would take me to the library and he said, Rhoda, when you grow up, you can be anything you want, what you want to be. And I was like, oh, I really, really would love to write books. I would love to have a book with my name on the spine written on it.
And you knew this at what age?
I was probably around 8 or 9.
Oh, wow. So young. You knew
Yeah.
right
I
away.
was like
Yeah.
that because I love books. Like it
Yeah.
was just like I would carry a book, read a, I don't know. It was just like this fantasy of like you can travel and you could do anything, and I was just so fascinated. And I was really, really good at school. Like I love school. I still love school. I love my kids' school, which is annoying. I'm like, should we do homework? You want me to help you read the short story? You want to? And he's like, can you please, mom? I was like, I have that book. And I'll go get
I
it.
love
Oh, yeah.
that. I love it. You know what though? I mean, secretly, I love school too.
You do?
Yeah, I loved school too. I really did. I just always found like it was fun. I don't
Yeah.
think it's really until I got into like calculus that I was like, this isn't really that fun.
Yeah.
You know, calculus and pre-algebra
Yeah.
was
I don't
fun.
do math. I
Yeah.
don't. We had parent day at school on Saturday, and I skipped the math. They had like meet the math teacher and all that. I like usually my husband goes, I'm like, I just dipped out and had an
But
extra coffee break. I
back to school night and you're skipping math class. Who are you, Rhoda? That's your
I
danger
know,
sign.
I know, like full closure. But so do you help out with homework too? Like,
Oh my God, yeah.
are you just
Yeah.
like in
Home
their school?
homework is my jam. I'm like, we have homework tonight. Like, let's do it. So my oldest, though, who's 11, now she'll do homework in between her like theater practice and like on the bus
Okay.
on the way home. So she's like, she gets home, she's like, I'm done. Get out of my face. Like, I've already been there, done that. And then my middle, who's like 8, she'll still come to me for like math and everything. So that's great.
Okay.
And then
Yeah.
my little guy, he hasn't really gotten homework yet, but I'm always like, hey, let's practice some math work. What's going on? Like he's doing, see, for me, I go more towards math. See, my like
You see?
I'm very attracted to math and numbers.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
I love that.
But this is the interesting part, but I've always been like that since I was younger. And so for you knew right away that reading
I
and writing was
really
your
just
thing.
and love stories too, because they would always share stories about like where we come from and who did what, and it was just like this always like storytelling, because Somali culture is like an oral history more than a written one too.
So that's
Um,
interesting. Is that how you kind of, so going to a place where you weren't, there weren't a lot of you, how
mhm.
do you keep the culture of your origin country? Like, how do you keep that culture so like strong and tight within your family?
They were really, really strict about we only spoke Somali or Arabic at home. Like we weren't
Mm.
allowed to speak Norwegian. So we would
Mhm.
like come home and like it's like taking off your shoes and you just kind of like put that outside personality or like the Norwegian-ness out the
Yeah.
door. But then we as kids we would speak Somali if our parents weren't listening. So
Ah,
which is interesting because now I'm raising two kids that are bilingual. They're Norwegian, Somali, and English, so they prefer speaking American at home. And I'm like, speak Norwegian, and I'm like, oh my god, I catch myself in like why that is important because you'll learn the other language anyway, but
that's
the
right.
language we speak, we get to keep. So,
Yeah.
so I'm really grateful that they were really strict about that because I speak it fluently and curse like a sailor. So they would be like, it's just
Oh,
not.
so your last name is the H hard or is the H silent?
Ahmed.
Ahmed. Okay, because my husband, he has an Arabic name as well, but his name is Rahman, but the H is hard. It's
Oh,
Rahman.
yeah.
Rahman.
From where?
Well, his family converted to Islam when he was younger.
Mhm.
And so their name became Rahman. And
Yeah.
so whenever anyone says ramen, he's like, that's not my name. That's not my name. So
Rahman. Yeah.
I meant to ask you. So it's
Yeah.
Ahmed.
It's Ahmed. It's actually Rhoda Ahmed Hermanson is my full name, but I still write under my maiden name, and I always kind of have.
Yeah,
Um,
it's like your little alias. It's like a little like it's like your little secret part of you kind
yeah,
of thing, like your
yeah.
creative part.
It is
So
really. So then I would, yes, then I told my dad, and I kind of forgot about it a little bit. I went to college, I studied anthropology of all things. I didn't even know you could study literature or anything else. I don't know. They immigrant parents is like, please be a doctor, a
that's
lawyer,
right.
engineer.
That's right.
And I didn't, I I wasn't meant for neither.
Uh-huh.
And I was like, I want to be an anthropologist. They're like, how's that going to pay your bills? I'm like, I don't know. Anyway, and then I wrote my first book, my first novel. And that novel was a Norwegian bestseller, and it was in the same library me and my dad used to go.
No way. What a
Yeah,
full circle moment.
really was like seeing it and then holding it and weeping. It was.
And that book, was it a children's book or
No,
was
that
it
was a not fiction novel.
So where was it? Okay, so now we're doing fiction novels. We've become a writer. We've made dad proud. We're full circle moment. Where now do we shift into children's books? Because
Yeah,
that's
so
really become what you've become known for.
yeah, that is a really great question because we lived in Norway and then me and my husband got married and then we moved to New York after
Mm.
we just had our daughter and she was around 3 months. And then I would start reading for her like super early. I'm like, okay, let's get those. We're in America. There's more brown books here. There's way
Yes.
more brown people in America. And then I was like, wait, what?
Yeah.
Wait. And then the books that did exist as she was getting older were about history, like the main thing, history, which is really important. But also, when you don't know how to read, the first thing you see in the world is pictures. So
That's
I
right.
was just looking for pictures where the mom looked like me and the baby looked like her. And I
Hmm.
was looking for the ABC books and the goodnight books. And I mean, I found some really good ones, but I just had a strategy, Lizzie, of like just sticking to animal and vegetable books so she wouldn't.
Oh,
So I would just like start curating and then I was starting to like almost obsess about it somehow. And
Hmm.
then in the meantime, I got a gig as I got a political column in a Norwegian newspaper, and they said you can write about anything. And I was like, well, I really saw this, black politician named Obama, and I think he's going to be president. I think I want to write about him.
No
So
way.
I did. So then I was covering him before the election and before he started running, and then I did that for 8 years. So that was kind of like my other like different kind of writing gig. So
Right.
I got to for like the inauguration, I got to meet him. It was like magical. And I was like still looking for a brown children's book. And then I read that a black woman went to space. And I was like, hold on, how? And then I started asking around, did you guys know like an African American woman went to space? And everyone was like, no, she didn't. We would know. No, she didn't. We would know. And I was like,
Right.
no, she really did. And then obsessive, when I say obsessive, I mean like to the point where like, how do we know a dog went to space, but we don't know main genocide
Exactly.
space?
Hmm.
So then I just started writing it. I saw the whole book, found an illustrator on Etsy, never met her, put the book together. My friend introduced me to an agent, Margaret Riley King, and she was so amazing. She's like, I don't do kids' book, but I will do this one because we believe in science. And I was sitting in her office, and her office was called Endeavor at WME.
Uh-huh.
Mae Jemison's space shuttle was called Endeavor.
Oh, yes, it was.
So we were like, we don't play around with science. So the book comes
Wow.
out, sells out within 2 weeks, and it's just been the greatest gift ever. Just
Yeah.
seeing kids sharing it, holding it, and then I finally got to meet May and hand her the book after 3 4 years, and all these kids holding the book in space costumes, and I was like another full circle moment of like I really do live by if you can dream it, believe it, and work hard, anything is possible.
But what was that
So,
like? I mean, you write a book about this real life person. You put it into a character that
yeah.
even as you look through the book, I mean, I've read this book several times, a thousand times with my
Oh,
girls and with my son. And you read through the book, and it feels like this is something that they can be. It feels touchable. It doesn't feel like so in the stars, right? It feels like
yeah.
relatable and touchable. How does that feel when you actually meet her?
I know. I mean, it was surreal. But I also do believe like it has the magic of a childhood, right? Like we're
Yes.
parents
Yeah.
and we get to tell stories that shape our children forever. And
Hmm.
I think the stories we tell are way more important, and the stories they read have way more importance than what the society and the outside is telling them.
Right.
Like that, we're combating that, right? Like, so
Mm.
here you are. She was like a tiny little girl, and all she wanted to do was travel to space. And she meets a teacher that asks her to become a nurse instead. And
Hmm.
she still goes to space,
Yeah.
So I'm
Yeah.
like, and
It's
so
the
you're like, so
willpower.
when they're telling, yeah, it is really, really willpower. So I really feel prior to that, I knew books were important, but I had no idea that true power is knowledge. And
Yeah.
that's why they don't want little girls to go to school in certain countries. That's why some schools don't invest in books or stories, or that's why publishers retell the same narrative they want your kids and you to be stuck on, like
Right.
it.
Right.
And if it's brown kids, usually it's sports and music.
Hmm.
And but it's like, but there's inventors, there's streamers, there's painters, they're like,
Yeah.
like I just want our kids to have the same, be like the center of the story just for the
Hmm.
story's sake, and have a dragon and have a cape and
Yeah.
fly,
All
be
of it.
upside down and be a ballerina. Like,
Yeah.
so I started doing research on it, and then I started seeing that, whoever holds the pen tells history. So,
Ah, wait a minute. Hold on. Step
I
back two
mean,
seconds because that's
that's
something.
literally the quote I live by. I'm like, whoever is, because if you don't sit down and tell your history, someone's going to tell it for you, correct?
Whoever
Like,
holds the pen holds the history.
tells history. Yes,
Wow.
that's that's it. So if you live in a country where the playing field, you will never be able to catch up because of history. But what you can do is like you can reimagine it and make something new,
Hmm.
and then you can catch up. It's not even a catch up game. It's like it's
No,
just
you
we're
could just
all
tell
like
your
our
story.
kids. yeah, you just tell the story. So I think that's what I loved about it the most. And then seeing how me telling stories to my kids help shape their identity of themselves.
So that's what I want to get into. I want to understand, like, because this book came about after you became a mom.
Yeah.
So it was almost like motherhood was that precipice for you
Yeah.
to say, hey, this isn't out there. And now I see it, especially in a place like New York, or let's just say the United States
Yeah.
as a whole, right? I
Mm-hmm.
see that we don't have those books of representation
Yeah.
that aren't necessarily history books. And even the history books aren't necessarily always told
Right.
to the correct, to the correct manner in which they occurred. So
Mm-hmm.
how has that shaped how you have introduced more things into your children's lives so they can see themselves? So obviously you wrote the book, you took it into your own hands, but now you're doing
Mm-hmm.
that for kids all over. So what is your theory there? What's your philosophy on that as a mother?
I love that question. I think it's just knowledge, right? Like here we have Bessie Coleman, who no one knows about, which was 3 years prior to Amelia Earhart. Like
Mm-hmm.
before Amelia Earhart, she got a plane from her dad, and that's how she became a pilot.
Right.
Prior to that, Bessie Coleman had to quit her school because she had to help out on the plantation field with her parents. And
Mm-hmm.
then she saved enough money and she got all this money. And then she went to France, Lizzy,
Uh-huh.
learned French, got her
Wow.
pilot
I
license,
didn't know that.
came back to segregated America and still couldn't fly. But she had the first international pilot license.
License.
And that has nothing to do with being black or white. That's just the first person,
So
right?
why don't we know about these stories, Rhoda?
That's what I don't know. Like you tell me, I don't know. So in a
Mhm.
way, it's like, um, and then I started doing research on her, and then I started to compare the two. And I was like, but again, because of history and hardship and like where the focus is, it's away from stories that are being told, being shared, being rewritten, and also the gatekeepers of like, what do I want you to know about you? And
Right.
I only want you to know a certain thing about you, and it
The
stops here.
gatekeepers. That's what it is. Yeah.
Right? So, but then we live in such a beautiful world right now. Like it's never been it I'm so excited by the time we live in. Like you can get any knowledge from anywhere at any given time.
Yeah.
Like
It's
no
true.
one can be like, "Hey, you want to learn how to knit?
Mhm.
Give me 24 hours." I'm gonna like kids have access to things, and I've seen them during COVID, which was the only really amazing thing that happened during COVID was all schools got tablets and internet.
This is true.
So kids were all of a sudden they're like learning how to code they on Zoom. I mean,
Mm,
I did a 10,000 kids during COVID on Zoom, and I was in their house, like literally in their tiny little computer or tablet, and their
right.
siblings next to them, and they were like going to be inventors and coders, and they were going to cure cancer, and one wanted to be a dentist and was wondering about like how if you don't have teeth but you need a tooth, how do you get a tooth? Usually you would never know that answer.
That's
Now
true.
he was just Googling it. And then he was like, oh, so that's what happened. So, in a world where America runs on fear,
Hmm.
right? We just want to scare, we're scared, we're scared. It's just like, but actually, the opposite is also true. Like, kids are learning in a record speed
They are.
about things we could just dream about. So,
How did now this is not to take it dark, but this is to take it
stay
like no, I'm because this is
in
these
the light, stay in the light. It's too
I know.
early, stay in the light.
I know, but this is the type of stuff we'll get off and I'll be like thinking about and I'll be like, dang, you know what? I
Okay.
would really love to know Rodas. And then I'll be texting you, and then everybody else will be like, wait a minute. So
Go.
it's like not to keep it like I love that, right? I think there is something so beautiful that the world is now open on so many levels to our children. And they are learning at a rapid speed, at a younger pace, things that you're absolutely right. I would have never looked up how does a tooth, when you lose a tooth, how can you put a tooth back into an adult person's mouth or whatever it is, like, right? Things I would have never thought about. So the internet and books are beautiful for that. But then there's also a side, right, that it's moving so fast. There's so much information out there. How do we make sure? And listen, I'm talking to you because you have older children than me. So I'm asking you as a friend, hey, how also do we streamline the information that our kids are getting? And also the internet isn't necessarily, and books necessarily aren't always giving the right information.
Right.
So how do we now streamline our information that our kids are receiving, that they're still learning, that they're still advancing at the speed and rate as everyone else, and their
Yeah.
curiosity is still expanding and growing, but it's doing it
Mhm.
in the right way?
Yeah, I think, I mean, I'm like, I don't know if I'm the right person to ask. You should ask my children. They're like, she's so strict. She's so strict.
Well,
Like
talk to me. Tell me,
I
Rhoda, because
shouldn't.
I'm
Yeah,
learning, girl. I am
I'm like, oh my
learning,
God, am I
girl.
really gonna share this? But everyone who know, like everyone knows, and I also stand by it because I really do. We come from a generation we didn't have the internet. We remember it coming. We remember like when it was the dial-up and
Yep.
when you could like so. It sounds like so long ago, but it really is not that long ago. But
No.
I really say to them that the internet is like having access to the world without a passport. And
Mm,
there's places I would never let you travel without an adult. So, that's the internet for me. Like the internet is like you can go anywhere, you can see anything, you can be scared, you can be hyped, you can be like there's so much everything. It's like there's things you can't unsee once you see it. There's all these things. So my kids didn't, I mean, and my youngest still have no social media until they were 15. So
mhm.
that's out of the question. And then we have a charging station with all our phones, adults included. That means me and my husband have to be part of this. And when we come home, our phones are on silent and they charge. So we're together. We have no phones at the dinner table. We have the computer facing this way where we can see it. Like, and it's just simple driving rules that work for our family. We don't sleep with the phone next to our bed. We turn it off an hour before bedtime. Like there's just use it as you would like old phone. Remember those phones that you're like, hey, so and so is calling you, Lizzy, it's for you. And
That's
you'd
right.
be like, hello. That's kind of like how we use our phones. Like it has
Wow.
its place and set time, and then when we're done, and then and not for your entire life because my daughter is now in college
Yeah, yeah.
called me 3 o'clock this morning, and I was like, "What's the matter? What's the matter?" And she's like, "Oh, I'm just waiting for Thai food. Is it what time is it?" I'm like, "Oh my God, babe, it's 3 o'clock." And she's like, "Oh, okay, okay, go back to bed, mom. Love you." I was like, I literally ran because I was like, my phone was ringing in the kitchen. So I get it, but I
Wow.
also feel when you're older, you can do all these things with your phone, but when you're
Right.
little, you literally just need guidance. And so let me help you the best I can with this. And
Mhm.
a lot of times it would be, oh, aren't you afraid that they're gonna feel left out and all and it never happened. They have friends, they are part of group, but we just didn't do all the drama in between because we're
Yeah.
not on the thread at like midnight when
Yeah.
you see it the next morning, but it's okay. Like just also being okay to disconnect and log off and just
Right.
use it intentionally as a family. It really works for us because we work crazy hours. So
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. I'm like, I know you guys are so busy. I love the fact that you're able to disconnect like that. I think that's something I can learn from you because the kids, yes, I can be very like we with iPads and
yeah,
my 11-year-old, she has a phone because she rides the bus.
yeah.
And under any other circumstance, I would never ever ever allow her to have a phone. But because she rides the bus and I'm like the bus system,
You
it's
need to
like
get a hold
not
of them.
good.
Yeah,
I'm like, I need to be able to reach out to her. So she texts us
yeah,
every day when she gets out of school. She
yeah.
texts us on the bus. She texts us when she's like close to her stop, all these things. So I'm like, great. She's not really allowed on the weekends or after a certain time to like be on her phone or use her phone. Absolutely no social
Yeah,
media
right,
whatsoever. I
right.
couldn't emphasize it enough.
Yeah.
It's funny because the other day she comes into the bathroom. I'm in the bathroom and she's like, Mom, so just wondering, can I like once I turn like 12, can I like get social media? And I was like, hell no. And she
Age
was
group
like,
is 13, and you
yeah,
can still add on
yeah.
to that.
She was like, I was like, hell no, you probably won't get that till you're like easy 17. And she's like, oh, okay, I was just checking. Like she was testing me. I was like,
Yeah.
what the hell is that?
Oh my God, I love that. She was just testing the water and see
She
how
was
it's like,
testing watch. She's
it
like,
was
oh, oh,
really, yeah.
Oh, okay. Okay, cool. No worries. I kind of knew it, but no worries. I was like, girl,
And I,
bye.
I mean, my son was like, well, Snapchat won't even be around by the time I'm allowed to get. I'm like,
Great.
yeah,
Great. So
maybe not. Who knows?
one more thing
We'll
you don't have
see.
to worry about. Don't worry about it,
Yeah.
you know?
But
And I
then
think
also it's so sweet because we do like, like when you said about news, like where does it come from when we eat dinner and they would like say something random that's like far out there. We always say like, okay, where did it come from? Is it TikTok news? Is it like where
ooh,
is it lunch news? Like where did this news come from?
I
Did
like
you read
that.
it at the New York Times or like where did it come from? And they're like, oh yeah, it was like so and so saw it on TikTok. I'm like, okay, cool. So TikTok news. We call it TikTok.
Exactly. Yeah, you have to teach them where the credible sources are.
Yeah.
Like, where
Yeah.
do the credible sources come from, and make sure that you are learning from a credible source.
Yeah. And also just sharing what's going on in the world too, that is not about like a celebrity's latest thing, like if
Mm-hmm.
there's an earthquake or if there is a flood or if there is hunger, also we like it's on us to share it and teach it.
Right.
And I really do feel like just it's such a short time, Lizzy, like
Mm-hmm.
childhood only consists of 18 summers.
I
And
know.
every summer, and then this summer it was like our daughter, she turned 18. I was a mess. I was just like weeping, and then I was like, well, that means next year, like, am I gonna get to host your? And she's like, well, maybe I'll be in Bali with my friends or surf. I'm like, oh my God, see, I told you. Like, it was just like the morning of like a childhood that is like it goes by so fast. But
Yeah.
just also seeing how both of them look back and like, oh, that's my favorite book. Oh my God, I used to read that like a million times. And so I know that children's literature shapes children forever. You never forget
Right.
your childhood's favorite book. Like, what was your favorite books when you were growing up?
This is wow, you're putting me on the spot. Um,
Or like something that you just remember about.
oh, this is funny because you're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. There was one book that
Mhm.
my mom and I will always read together. She would always read this to me, and it ended up becoming my favorite book. And she would reference it for years and years and years
Oh,
later. The Princess and the Pea.
I
And
love that.
I
Wow.
it
There you
was no
go.
representation there, but it was just this idea that she always used to call me her little princess because I was her only girl.
Mhm.
And so it was like the little pea all the way at the bottom of all those mattresses.
Yeah.
And no one knew she was a princess, but she always knew inside that, like, or whatever. And so
Oh,
my
I
mom would
love that.
always be like, it comes from the inside, Lizzy. It always comes from the inside. And so I remember it, girl. I remember it.
See, it's still
Yes,
there. And it's like, and it helped you shape the not, part of your identity of like you're special. No one
it
needs to know
did.
except the two of us. Like it like
That's so
stories connect
true.
us as humans and they connect us to our childhood. But also what I realized is they are so important because they connect us to our future selves. Of like what so
Ah,
if you never see yourself in a book, what does that indirectly tell you that you don't people like you don't do the things like you're not in it and
right.
it's not even words, Lizzy, it's just like it's a vision, right?
Visual. Right.
So that's why I was like I love I just love seeing kids. I'm like that's me, wait, you look like me. Oh my gosh, I'm gonna go to space. I'm gonna go to space too. I'm gonna be in my and you're just like it's literally this generation, it's literally riots. They're coming.
Yeah.
So
Ro-
that's why,
okay,
like,
so I want to ask you the same question though, and I want to flip it on its head just a little bit. What is your favorite book when you were growing up, and what is your favorite book for children now?
oh wow, really good question. So hard. How am I gonna pick one? I don't know.
Well, growing up, what was your favorite book growing up?
I remember I really loved Pippi Longstocking. She was like all-time favorite because I lived by the horses and we used to ride the horses with no permission. Like we were little gangsters, like roaming around in the forest, a pack
little
of kids.
little gangsters roll around the forest of Norway.
I know. King's Forest is like really, really hardcore. You know?
I'm telling you.
I really think, I mean, the one book that really, it was when I learned to read English and
Mhm.
I started reading Toni Morrison and Maya Angelou, but Toni Morrison's The Bluest Eyes was really
Yeah.
special to me because she, in the book, thinks that if she had blue eyes, her
Mm-hmm.
life wouldn't be as bad.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember I retold the book to my dad, and he just looked like he saw a ghost. And he's like, "You read all of that?" That was like, he's like, "I," and then he asked me, "Do you want blue eyes?" And I just was like, "No, I think you can look and see and feel different things regardless of your eyes." But that was before I knew about the history of, like, I put it in perspective later in life,
Mm-hmm.
I think. Um, and yeah, I mean, I have so many favorite books for kids. There's so many, and I'm so fortunate that I get to know the authors and but like, everything from Snowy Day is like, oh my God, it was. And then our daughter loved this book series called Fancy Nancy. I don't know if your daughter read it.
Yeah.
And I was like, I wish there was like a girl that looked like her that was,
Yeah.
because she used to wear my hats and my jewelry and my shoes. And then fast forward 15 years later, the new book that's coming out in a few weeks, Edda Extraordinaire, is inspired by my daughter's phase of like feathers, and there were only Eloise and Pinkalicious, and
Yes.
I was like, okay, but like, so I would like invent something for her, or we would like find a way that wasn't just the sidekick look like her, or the
Wait a
so
minute. Can you tell us the name? Because by
yes.
the time this comes out, it'll probably be out. What's it
It's
called?
so sweet. It's called Ed Extraordinaire.
Etta
And it's about
Extraordinaire.
this beautiful little girl who does anything ordinary in extraordinary ways. And she has a large personality. And it was co-written by Sharnae Gordon. We're so excited. It comes out on HarperCollins. And I really just, it's just a joyful little Black girl who just
Mm-hmm.
gets to be that. I wish it just like it's just received in the sense of like just seeing the joy. She has a plan, she has a beautiful room, she has a pink teacup, Lizzy.
Oh,
She
I
looks
love
just
this.
she's just like our girls. Like
Uh-huh.
there is no racial component to it except that her skin looks like ours. So
Yeah.
I just hope the book is just gets a fair chance the same way without it being like a black book or a white book or whatever, or not having the little brown girl labeled diva, which
Right.
that's one of the things I know that they're like, oh, isn't she a little diva? It's just like, no, she's just a joyful little girl
Girl.
who
That's
happens
right.
to be
A
brown.
brown girl.
That's it. So
Yeah.
I just, so that's my, I know for a fact that, because again, it's the lens who sees it, right? Like
That's right.
that's so and it's just like, no, they're allowed to be joyful and take space on every
That's right.
page, and they're allowed to dress up and wear heels and pearls,
That's
and
right.
that's what I wanted to create in the children's literature of like in 100 years when we're not here, these books are going to be here.
That's
So
right.
great
That's right.
grandkids, they're going to be like, oh my gosh, do you have this one? Do you collect this one? Do you have an ABC that they just their family looks like ours or
Mhm.
someone else's? And diversity is not necessarily just skin color. It's like ability and it's family. And
That's right.
uh, I just want our books to reflect the world we live in.
The one who holds the pen holds the power as
Yes,
well, right?
yes,
You know,
yes,
that's it's true. This is interesting because do you feel like that is what your publishing company has been based upon? Do you feel
yeah,
like that is the ethos of your
yeah,
company, that you
yeah.
want to present and produce and make
Mhm,
stories for all children, but
mhm.
that all children are represented?
Yes, and that's the reason I started Hightree Publishing, and that was also to show that we can make a book in 3 to 4 months and have a quicker turnaround in 3 to 4 years because we live in a different time,
Yeah.
and that it's profitable. That for every book we sell, we give one away. So we've been giving away thousands of books, and as a publisher, we go into schools that have no libraries and have no books, and can help children see
Mhm.
themselves in a bookshelf. So I was like, if the first book for so many kids have been the first book they ever hold is the book I gave or wrote, like that is more than enough for me. Like,
Right. Yeah.
instead of it being, I mean, the publishing industry is a $7 billion industry, and still schools have no libraries and no books.
Mm.
And as a publisher, you're like, no, no, you need to go meet the kids. Like,
Yeah.
go talk to the kids, because ultimately that's who we write for,
That's
right?
right.
Like,
That's right.
I know maybe Nessa in like 20 years from now, they'll be like, well, I wrote this book about this brown estrogen, and then I want to be an estrogen. I don't know, but I really do know that I've seen the magic.
Yeah.
I've seen, and I felt it, and I was called to be like, wow, this is bigger than me and my kids. Like this is,
Mm.
and then I started helping other authors write books the same way, same turnaround, same, and also it became a New York Times bestseller. And like, we know how this works. It's doable. You
That's
can
right.
write a book. Anyone has a book inside of them. Like, just do it. Like,
It's
do it for
true.
the sake of our
I mean,
children.
I am writing a children's book,
Yeah.
just so you know. I
Oh,
know, but it's such a departure from me. I mean, I remember I've always like journaled. I've
yeah.
always enjoyed writing, but writing a book is very different.
Yeah.
And writing a children's book is very intentional.
Yeah.
And so, it's been a process, but it's a lovely one. It's funny because as I was doing
Oh my
research for
gosh. I want
this,
to.
as I was doing research for this podcast though, and like I was like, you know what? I want to like come in. This is Rhoda. I'm excited to talk to her. There was a quote that I heard, and it said, a life without books is a life not worth living. And
Mm.
I think that's so interesting for your story because books have literally influenced so much of your life and so much of your career and so much of how you parent, even as a mother. And I just think
Mhm.
that's fascinating. And I think that what we kind of get lost nowadays with iPads and
Mhm.
technology and even I fall short of it myself sometimes. So I'll say this even for myself is that I forget the power of books and the power, not the power of books. I forget the power of that moment of
Mm.
reading books with your kids and
Mhm.
how impactful that is. Like I
Mhm.
have 3 kids running around here and
Mhm.
I'm a full ass career woman
Mhm.
and I'm busy and there's a lot of things and I'm juggling constantly. I'm not
Mhm.
going to lie, my youngest, my little boy, he's probably gotten the shortest end of the stick in terms of us like sitting down and reading with him every night.
Mhm.
Whereas my oldest, every single night, it was clockwork. It was
Mhm.
like, we are on this. And it makes me feel some sort of way. I feel
Mhm.
like I'm shafting him. So I'm actually happy to be having this conversation because from now on
No.
I'm gonna be better about it.
But there's always going to be a feeling of lack as a mom or as a parent. So give
Yeah.
yourself grace for that. It's like you're still there. He loves
Yeah.
you. He wants to hang out with you, but you're like, but those other two, they got so much
I
reading, but
mean
you're
that
getting so something else. So, it's like any childhood, they're never going to be the same. They're never
yeah.
going to look the same. So give yourself grace for that too, of like, it's like you give what you can, and that's
Yeah.
more than enough.
Right, right. No, it's important though. It really is. I think it's such an important part of their childhood.
Mhm.
And I will say that, man, you are so inspirational, Rhoda. You really are
Oh,
on so
yeah,
many
I am.
levels. You know what book we love? I will
Mhm.
say this. You know what book we love? And I feel like actually it's a great book to read before bed is Wiggly Toes.
Oh, thank
Yes,
you.
it is. Because you know
Oh,
why? It's
it's
one of those
so
books that just gets them
it's
moving
fun. Yeah,
before they go to bed. And I'm like, this is phenomenal. Like, get up. Let's
yeah.
do it. Come on. Let's do it. And it's just like
Oh,
gets
they love
all
that. Oh, that makes
they
me so
love it.
happy.
They love it.
It's so nice. Thank you for that.
I love it.
Yeah, it was really, really, it was a fun book to read because yeah, again, because it was like there's no book about how to calm yourself down. Like everything is
Yes.
like something like you don't need to buy, you need to go anywhere, you don't need anyone. What is that one thing that only you have in you that's your power? And then it was like eventually kids are like, oh yeah, my breath. Oh yeah,
Yeah.
hey, yeah, that too. And it's like so when you're nervous, you hold your breath when you're trying to relax and then just going inwards. And again, it's just like, a story fun told in a fun
Mhm.
way
That's
or
right.
you were learning something. And they happen to be like a mom that looks like you and me and a
Yeah.
kid that, looks like your daughter.
Exactly. Now, okay, so this is I want to talk to you about you just a little bit in terms of like that aspect right there because that brings up for me that's the way that you kind of take a meditation or a calming kind of take for
Mhm.
kids. What do you do that what is it like in your world as an adult, as a woman? How do you find your time to self love or calm down or end of the day? What does that look like? What does your wiggly toes look like for you?
Oh, that's such a good question, girl. Thank you. I was like, wait, Wiggly Toast. For me, I'm so boring, Lizzy. I really, it's like I'm a routine old, going on 90 years old. Like it's
Same, Rhoda, same.
literally, I wake up at 5, I meditate, I journal, I write. And then the kids wake up around 7 and get them to school. I do my hot yoga and then I work for a few hours. And then I have every Friday off, and I have had since they were born. I
Oh,
usually Fridays,
wow.
like
It's your
that's
day.
when, yeah, I can go for a beach walk, or we can go lunch, or we can do something fun. And I go to bed at 9:30. I don't know what goes on after 9:30 in my house. And having teenagers, I'm telling you, the next morning you're like, someone had a party? Who was
Oh my
over?
God. Uh, What time do you wake up? I'm in bed by 9:30.
Five.
What's 5?
I wake up at 5, yeah. And then if I go out, like yesterday, I went to a book reading, or if I'm late, then I have to like have coffee in order to,
Oh my God, you're
So,
you're living my dream life, by the way. Okay. Fridays off, go to bed at 9:30, wake up at 5.
yeah.
It sounds like a dream.
But I
It
don't
sounds
know
like
what
a
I'll
dream.
do with the older I get. You know how old people, they eat dinner at like 2 in the morning.
Yeah.
They go to bed at like,
No. Old people eat dinner at like 5. What are we
yeah,
talking about?
it's
No.
literally, I already do that. So I'm like,
Yeah.
I'm totally fucked. I don't know. Sorry,
You're
couldn't
good. Yeah, yeah, you're cursed. But you know what? You'll probably just be peeing more often throughout the night. That's all. Yeah. Not a big deal. Ooh,
But
boo.
I really, really love your whole universe you created. Like it's so nice to see you in this space of home and family and beauty, and you're such an inspiration. It's like all the tips you give, and it just feels so nice to just be included and seeing ourselves. So I just want to take a moment and just say I really appreciate that about you too, of like, and showing your beautiful kids and family. And you know it's just, America is so segregated in that
Yeah,
sense,
yeah, it
but
is.
seeing us also take space and be included, and also just make our own space. That's the
Yeah.
other part of, like, you don't need to be included or like grab a chair and come at a table. Like, you just create your own table, and it's like we're all sitting there. So I just want to say thank you for that.
Oh my God. You know what? Just like you said to me, I receive it. I receive
Mhm.
it. And you sent me the sweetest message. And honestly, it touched me so much to my core. It really did. And I think that when we can give each other their flowers too, our flowers too, and like tell each other, I think it means so much because
Mhm.
you don't hear it from your peers as much. You hear it from your family and you hear it from the
Yeah,
people who love you,
yeah,
but hearing it from your peers and, people who will become friends, because Rhoda, we're already best friends in my head.
yeah.
And,
Mhm.
it
I
just
can't wait
means
for a beach walk.
I know. Oh, let's do it, please. It just means so much. This is what I'll end this with though. And I just want to ask you, are you comfortable in your own skin?
Yes.
And how long have you been like that?
Always. I grew up with, again, the stories of my heritage and where I come from. Like, we were kings and queens. Like, we
Mm,
come from Somalia. We come from like the cradle of the earth, and then we all traveled, and there's nothing I can't do. Like, I am inherently entitled to be on this earth just as much as anyone. And so are my kids, and so are you. So then coming to a place where it it's not, it's something you have to learn here, makes
mm,
me sad in that sense.
mm,
But like, we're entitled to walk as we belong, like, so I really do feel like in one generation, Lizzy, too, of storytelling and family and history, um my mom was illiterate. And
mm.
so just the fact that I could come from an illiterate mom and I can write books that pay for my daughter's college in one generation,
That's
like,
right.
what else can we not do here in this short time of span? And I will never give up that power of anyone telling me what I'm capable of or not capable of. Like, And I just hope that for every book I write and everything I do in my work life, as well as like my family and marriage and all of that. But I really, really, truly believe that the stories we tell ourselves are the most important ones.
Mm-hmm.
And I grew up knowing that, you know, we don't have much, but look at us. Like, wow, look at us. We don't. So having to go into Title I schools of kids that have the same background or lack that I had growing up, but then seeing like they're so amazing and they're capable of so much. And I really don't want to give society that much power in telling them that they're not worthy or they're not belonging. Like it's just not, I just refuse. I just don't want to live in that world. Like they're we just need to tell them what other people have done that, you know, you look at a traffic light and it's like, you know, Carver, like a black man invented the traffic light. Imagine if every kid in America, every time you see a traffic light and it's red light, green light, yellow, like he did that and he invented the traffic light and he invented the mask for that the firefighter used. Like and I'm like, where are those books? So I
That's
just hope
right.
in my lifetime that we'll create enough books that you know, our kids, I mean, they're already amazing, but I do believe that I am so comfortable of just being me and anything else, like that's all we got. What about you?
Drop the
Or that was a
mic.
long answer.
Look, drop the mic, Rhoda. Walk towards the light. That's what I have to say.
Stay in the light.
Stay in the light, Lizzy.
Stay
Stay in the
in the light.
light.
The light is bright. And also
The light is bright.
it has dark moments, but you know what? I also feel like the biggest task is also like let us just be joyful and celebrate us being here. We're like
That's right.
tiny little planet floating around like
That's
let's
right.
not, you know, so I have to say it's really exciting and it's such a beautiful time, but we're here so short. Like just
That's
let's
right.
not be fueled and driven by fear, but like the
That's
joy
right.
and love and let's be a little more like kids because they got
I
it
love
figured
it.
out.
You're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. Find that joy, find that light, be more childlike, and explore. I love it. Rhoda, I could talk to you all day. I could
I
talk to you
know,
all
me
day.
too, Lizzy.
I,
But
I
wait,
really
let me
do.
ask you the same question. I want you to answer it too.
Yeah. Have I always felt comfortable in my own skin? Um, no, but I've always had the seeds inside me that I knew would flourish. So
Mhm.
it
Oh,
took
wow.
it took me living a little bit. It took me coming outside of under my mom's wing, which
Mhm.
she was very nourishing, but just I think it just took me coming through puberty. I was always really tall and very skinny, and I was teased for it and all those things. But it took me becoming a young woman to really live in my body and appreciate who I was from inside all the way out. And so now you can't tell me nothing.
Mm,
You
right?
can't tell me nothing. Now I'm very comfortable. And my husband always says this. He's like, one thing that, I love about you, Lizzy, is that you're comfortable in your skin. And I
Yeah.
am. I'll walk into any room feeling comfortable in who I am. And who I am is who I am. You'll
Yeah.
catch me on good days. You'll catch me on, but who I am is who I am. And I'm comfortable with that. And so I've come to a really beautiful place in life. But,
Mhm.
and I was like this in my 20s for the most part too. But it took me a second to
Mhm.
come out of that adolescence. So
Mhm. Amazing. What
yeah,
a
that's all I'll
privilege
answer
to
that.
just go through life and just be you're amazing you.
I mean, listen, this is what we're hopefully teaching our children, boys and girls, right? Be you and live in the skin you're in. And even if it takes a second for you to get there, just
Yeah.
always know the seeds inside you exist, because this is, like you just said, these are your stories. This is your
Mhm.
history. This is where
Mhm.
you come from. We were kings and queens. And
Mhm. We
so
are
I
all
love
kings and
that.
queens. Come
I
on.
love that. I love that, Rhoda.
Oh
Okay.
my God. Thank
You
you, Lizzy. I
you owe
really
me a
appreciate
you owe
you.
me a beach walk.
Beach walk
Okay.
and breakfast.
And breakfast. And I cannot wait to give you that well-deserved, much needed loving hug that we are gonna have. So thank
Thank
you for coming
you.
on the Cool Mom Code podcast. Everyone, Rhoda has so many things coming out. Tell us the name of the book one more time.
It's called Ed Extraordinaire, and she comes out October 17th, where everywhere books are sold.
Etta
Go
Extraordinaire.
be extraordinary and joyful and fun. I can't wait.
I can't wait to read it. I love it. Thank you,
Mm,
Rhoda.
thank you so much, Lizzie. I
Okay.
really appreciate you.